Govshteyn from my home to yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. Today I am joined by Misha from MacroFab and Ted from Altium to talk about their collaboration and the latest product release that they have just announced. Guys, if we can start with perhaps a quick introduction. Misha, give, I know our viewers have seen you on camera before, but give us a quick update on yourself and on MacroFab.
Yeah, of course. My name is Misha Govshteyn. I'm a Chief Executive Officer here at MacroFab and have been with the company for about 4 years. MacroFab is a cloud manufacturing service focused on electronics. There are similar services like ours that are focused on various other aspects of manufacturing, especially mechanical parts. That seems to be a very popular type of services. We are one of the few companies in the largest by far offering electronics manufacturing services, and those services range anywhere from PCB assembly all the way to full product assembly. And we work with engineers that build from very small unit volumes, so it could be 1 or 2 units in a prototype, all the way to hundreds of thousands of units and millions of dollars per year, 100% in North America. But what we let our customers do is really use our cloud platform and our APIs to tap into a network of factories all across North America. So as you can imagine, it makes it easy to build services on top of it because it's a digital platform.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, Misha. And, we could do a whole half-hour session digging into why manufacturing in North America is important and why shorter supply chains are becoming more de rigueur in the current crisis, but that's for another day. Ted, quick introduction from yourself.
Sure. So Phil, thanks for having me. First of all, my name is Ted Pawela, and I am with Altium. My role is right now the Chief Ecosystem Officer, and I head what we call our Nexar business unit. That's the business unit that's focused on our cloud platform, which is called Altium 365. And so, my role in all of that really is to kind of, broaden Altium's business from what was a desktop tools company to now becoming a platform company, and with sort of the stated aim of going beyond design to connect in supply chain and to connect in manufacturing so that the whole business of creating electronic-based products can flow more smoothly.
Okay, so Ted, just fill me in a little bit on the relationship and how it developed with MacroFab, because prior to this product launch, you guys have been working pretty hard in the background, I guess.
Yeah, so as I said, given that our mission is to connect supply chain and manufacturing, several years ago, I think this is probably 6 or 7 years ago now, we acquired a company called Octopart, which a lot of people know because you can get real-time supply chain information when you want to buy electronic components. But we didn't have anything with manufacturing, and we've been eyeing that for a long time. Chris Church and Misha came to visit Altium. Gosh, Misha, I imagine it was probably three or 4 years ago now. So we kind of knew each other. But we, the reason why we've kind of come together in this way is that we feel that the way that we're going to solve this problem of connecting these 3 domains together has to be one that has a vision behind it for doing things on a digital platform. And we have talked to many manufacturers, but I think that MacroFab stands nearly alone in terms of having a vision for a company that is doing that work to have a vision and have invested to create a platform to do that digitally. That was sort of like the perfect partner for us. And we really share, that sort of common vision for a digital transformation of manufacturing for electronics.
Yeah, and having that whole digital thread connected all the way through is absolutely essential. Misha, when you look at it from your point of view, from Altium's point of view, it's an extension to manufacturing. For you, it's kind of buttoning up that connection all the way back to product design, even through to ideation of the product, which is which is essential for you. If they can, if they can get to use your tools as early as possible, I guess that makes sense. Is that where you saw the synergy working between the two companies?
Yeah, exactly. We draw a lot of parallels to the cloud market and what Amazon Web Services has done. And it's not a secret that in Amazon, developers and software designers are the driving force behind the way the cloud operates and the way it really came to life. So we're talking about tens of billions of dollars just at Amazon alone, and being driven by people that have really built the software. And I think the same dynamic is going to play out with electronics and hardware as well, which is why I give Altium a lot of credit. There are other companies that are probably going to launch plugins into their EDA tools to where you can kind of jump out of your EDA environment and into a quoting piece where you can go get a price quote. But that's not what it's about. It's really about kind of erasing the boundary between your design environment and your manufacturing floor. And right now, it's not just boundaries. These are entirely different spheres and universes, right? You're having to hop between different people, different organizations, and it all adds time, and it all, there's a lot of talk about agility, but the question is how, right? How do you actually make something agile? And that's putting designers right in the middle of actually not just making those decisions, but really be able to drive manufacturing decisions directly from their design tools. So I think it's the right way to do it. And I give Altium a ton of credit for saying, look, we're not just going to dabble with this. We're going to launch this as a Altium manufacturing service.
Yeah, no, I think it makes huge sense, and I love the term erasing boundaries. I think that's exactly what needs to happen between, between design and manufacturing. Anything that's data driven needs not to be siloed, and we see too much siloing in the whole, ideation to product fulfillment process. So I think this is really essential. So Ted, you've done all this work, you've done all this development. You recently had a press release, launched a product. Tell me about that product.
Yeah, so the product is called Altimade, and as Misha is suggesting, what we're really doing with that is just embedding into the design tool environment the ability to, a couple of important things: the ability to communicate with the people who will be manufacturing the board for you. I personally consider it to be the most important aspect of this, and just to kind of like tag on to what Misha was saying. The way I like to think of it, and in sort of the way we talk about it, is to say that we're kind of transitioning from designing for manufacturing to designing with manufacturing, and that's really the thing that we're on the verge of achieving with this. It's not 100% complete, but we're now in the design environment. We're in a position where, as someone designs, as they place components, as they lay out the board, they can see what is the cost implication, what is the availability of those components, but also how are they conforming to the constraints of the manufacturers that are behind this MacroFab and its network, not just generic DFM rules, but actually you could almost think of them as designed for MacroFab rules in a way. But it's more than rules. It's the people who are back there who can, interact with designers so that they make good decisions up front and not have to sort of turn back designs and redo it.
Yeah. And as Misha said, it's important to have that in kind of the same environment. So does that all sit within the, with the existing Altium tool set?
Yeah, it does. So I mentioned that, there's a dependency on our cloud platform, which is Altium 365. So to kind of like paint the full picture, what most people know us for is the design tools, and specifically Altium Designer, right? It's one of the most, if not the most widely used PCB design tool in the world. And inside of there, what you can, as you're designing, you're getting feedback. There's a new sort of panel in there, like we have panels in there for all kinds of sort of like capabilities and functions. But now there's a manufacturing panel where you literally see the cost implication, any kind of rules violations and things like that as you're designing. So you don't have to leave that environment. You're seeing that there. And at the time you complete your design, you can request a quote and you'll get that right there. Now, at the moment that you actually want to formalize that quote and have, you know, the full shipping charges and things like that on it, it actually will, you know, when you click on request that formal quote, you'll go into the Altium 365 environment, which looks just like Altium Designer, but it's on the web. It's on a web browser, right? And that's important. The reason why we do that is that collaboration is natural in the cloud. It is not natural with desktop tools, right? It's hard to connect Misha's desktop to my desktop, but here we are on a cloud platform, Zoom, and wow, it works wonderfully, right? So it is a very seamless experience from the perspective of the designer, and then from the perspective of the people on the manufacturing side. You know, with MacroFab, we're directly integrated to their platform. So they likewise are working in the environment that they are used to working in.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's hugely valuable. I was designing printed circuit boards back in the 1980s. We were barely using CAD, but we were in a world where we were largely working for OEMs that were doing their own manufacturing. And if we wanted to find out something was made, we opened a few doors and we went through to production. We had a quick chat and we came back. And conversely, if we designed something they didn't like, they came through and shouted at us. So it was, it was a pretty seamless process. But now we have so much outsourced manufacturing and such a broad ecosystem. This kind of thing is hugely valuable. How does it look, Misha, from a MacroFab company point of view? Do they benefit by then having access to more design tools through the Altium, or does this just give you access to, you know, the customers that are already using Altium tools?
Certainly a much bigger audience, right? And by the way, for MacroFab historically, Altium has been one of the largest EDA tools in our community. You know, there's a lot of EDA tools out there, but for whatever reason, the Altium has always been one of the dominant ones among the community of users that we have, and there's thousands of them. Us being built directly into Altium Designer now obviously gets us exposed to a lot more people. But in terms of impact, I would say it's twofold. One is that it's much more real time and immediate, and that makes the design asset really a living document as opposed to something you put into a zip file. Because what really happens now, and let's be honest about it, there are designers now that are, you know, sending their designs over to their supply chain team. They zip it up into a file, send it halfway around the world, and that design begins to drift immediately. And you know, that was happening on a multi-year scale before. It is now happening weekly. These factories don't have enough parts, so guess what they're doing? They're calling the supply chain team and they says, "Can I use, you know, these 3 subs to build your product?" And the answer is, "Let me check in with the engineers and we'll let you know. Hopefully it works." At that point, right, your design is no longer the living artifact of your product. That is now decoupled, and the real artifact is whatever the manufacturer has. So ability to actually go directly from your EDA tool really keeps that coherency in much better shape, and that's the way it should be, right? At the end of the day, choosing alternate parts is not something that should be done as a casual exercise where it's a couple of people in a conference call flipping a coin, right? The only designers really know whether something's going to work, and that there is it's not just agility for agility's sake. This is the famous story now with a totally different domain, but Tesla, right? Tesla shipped a lot of cars in the middle of a quarter where a lot of car makers weren't able to ship anything. How did they do that? They made a lot of design changes. So enabling electronics designers to make those kind of changes is the real game changer. It makes agility not just theoretical, but very much a practical, right?
Yeah, and right now in the supply chain crisis we're in, that's hugely important. I'm hearing more and more and using more and more the term design for disruption, and creating that agility. And what you're doing is actually connecting design to manufacture in real time, but also in a real world with an ecosystem of manufacturers, not just a single manufacturer. So for the designer, that's hugely powerful. That gives them a whole bunch of additional benefits that should mean a relatively seamless, or as seamless as possible, new product introduction. That's a really important part of this, Ted, that they know when they get to the end of their design that it's already been connected with a manufacturing community and it's pretty much ready to go. Is that one of the key benefits you're driving to designers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the more we can move towards truly working together, and not. And when I say working together, I mean literally. You'll remember you talked about designing in the 80s, and I was too. And I remember this time when we had this sort of like revolutionary idea introduced. It was called concurrent engineering. Right. Mm-hmm. And now they're 40 years, fast forward 40 years, and really we're still trying to overcome the same problems. And it used to be, like you said, we could just walk down the hall or go, to a different building and you could deal with that. Now, globalization has made it a lot more complex, but the problem's still very pertinent. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it so that we're thinking about manufacturing, and manufacturing people are involved in the process while it's taking place with design. So having that, connection, knowing who you're going to work with, having confidence they're going to be able to do it. That's all, I think, critical to enabling our whole industry to support the massive demand that is now in every single product, right? Everything.
Yeah. And Ted, I guess you've had this product out with beta customers that have really been kind of pounding it and, checking out every detail. Where are you in that process? How has that gone?
Yeah, we're in, I guess what I would say is that we're kind of in a controlled release process right now. Mm-hmm. And so we went through the beta. We had customers who went through that experience, did it first. Actually, if I were to rewind a little bit, a couple of years ago, Altium acquired a very small manufacturing shop in Brooklyn, New York, of all places. Not because we wanted to become the manufacturer ourselves, but because we knew it wasn't really prudent to ask a manufacturer to shut down their lines so they could experiment with us and try them. So we went through an early alpha program with some very simple boards and a small handful of customers. And then as we started working with MacroFab, we began a beta program and put more customers through that. And we're confident that we have something that has a lot of value for customers. But we want to make sure that we deliver the experience in with as perfectly as we possibly can. Yeah. So we announced, and we're making it accessible to people who say, yep, I'd like to try it, and I've got a board ready to do that. And so we're kind of like working through with a number of customers now on that. And then what we all both anticipate is that probably a couple of months from now, we'll kind of like open the gates entirely, and anyone will be able to, to come in and do that. But we're definitely welcoming customers now, and for any listeners, we're happy to work with you.
Fantastic. And Misha, an important strategic relationship really with Altium that kind of goes beyond this product. How important do you see that relationship with a company like Altium and strategic relationships generally? And what do you see in the future for this relationship?
Yeah, and it's not just us working on the product together. Altium is invested into MacroFab in more ways than one, and they're also a financial investor and participated in our last round. I think partly it's because there's so much left to do. One of the things that we're doing is really establishing the first true digital thread from the engineer to the manufacturing floor. It by itself doesn't have a whole lot of utility, but it opens up a door for a lot of really exciting use cases, right? Ted and I have talked about this already, but the world of NFTs, right? I think the Bored Apes are kind of truly boring use cases. I don't know if NFTs in their current form are going to be meaningful, but I think in the manufacturing world, where we're trying to prove traceability down to the factory floor, where we're trying to authenticate components, it becomes incredibly important. And really, at some point, national security is at stake. There's liability and ethical concerns are at stake. There's some really big things we could be doing. Can't do it without a digital thread being established first. You can't run a digital, you can't do traceability down to the blockchain, for example. And I know I'm getting pretty futuristic here, but you can't do it if the way you communicate with your factory floor is through zip files, right? That's just not going to work, right? So it's one of the very first steps, and I think the proof is in the pudding. We have to deliver a great user experience for engineers to really fall in love with, having the really one-stop experience where they can go from a design to a prototype and eventually a production build. But eventually, we're going to approach these enterprises with services that haven't been built yet. And I think the sky is the limit. There are so many problems in this space that I think we could be working on this. And I actually think it's going to accelerate quite a bit. You guys are talking about, something that wasn't possible in the 80s. Once you establish the core infrastructure, people forget cloud wasn't around 10 years ago, right? Some of the components were, but it really took off after a couple of big foundational pieces like virtualization was put into place. This is one of those moments, and I think we could be looking at 10 years from now at a ton of stuff built that doesn't exist right now, and this is one of the first steps towards that future.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you there, because I think there's as well as the foundational parts that people like you are building and that are available, there's a bunch of dynamics happening in the industry where supply chain security has become super important. We've shifted from a just-in-time to a just-in-case business model quite substantially, and we'll settle somewhere back in the middle again after some time. But there is no doubt, without data, you can't have insight, and that insight is where you add the value and you make the supply chains more secure. So connectivity is fundamentally important to be able to do that. I think you've brought a product to market at exactly the right time, and the right product that the market needs. I still can't figure out why MacroFab are the lone player in such an awesome marketplace, and I think that will just continue to develop, and that that manufacturing ecosystem is becoming more and more important. So yeah, great job, guys. Great job talking to me today. Thanks for explaining the relationship and the product. I really appreciate that, and thanks so much for your time. We'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Oh, great to see you again.
Yep, thanks, Philip.